In an era defined by constant connectivity and unpredictable chaos, we often find ourselves living at the mercy of our environments. We're conditioned to believe that our happiness is a byproduct of our circumstances, that if the world is kind, we are at peace, and if the world is harsh, we must suffer. This reactive existence turns us into emotional puppets, where every headline, every critique, and every minor setback pulls a string, dictating our mood and draining our vitality. We spend our lives trying to control the uncontrollable, frantically attempting to arrange the external world to suit our preferences, only to find that the more we grasp for certainty, the more fragile we become. But there is an ancient alternative, the path of the Stoic. To be emotionally bulletproof is not about becoming a cold, unfeeling machine. It is about developing an internal sanctuary that no external force can breach. It is the realization that while you cannot control the wind, you can absolutely control the set of your sails. Stoicism provides us with a psychological framework to decouple our well-being from the whims of fortune, shifting our focus from what happens to us to how we choose to respond. By mastering the art of internal sovereignty, you reclaim your power and trade fragility for a grounded, enduring strength. If you are ready to stop being a victim of circumstance and start building a mind of iron, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a guide on mastering your inner world. The modern human condition is defined by a peculiar kind of invisible bondage. We walk through our lives believing we are free agents, masters of our own destiny and captains of our own souls, yet our daily emotional reality tells a different story. Most of us are living as emotional puppets. We have unwittingly handed the strings of our internal peace to everyone and everything around us, granting the external world total jurisdiction over our hearts and minds. The mechanics of the string. To understand the puppet syndrome, we must look at how these strings are attached. Every time we tie our well-being to a specific outcome that we do not entirely control, we create a new tether. We grant a stranger in traffic the power to ruin our morning. We give a social media algorithm the power to validate our self-worth. We give the weather, the economy, and the moods of our co-workers the authority to decide whether we will be happy or miserable today. Consider the traffic rage phenomenon. You're in your car, a private space, moving toward your destination. Someone cuts you off. In that moment, your blood pressure spikes, your grip tightens on the wheel, and you spend the next 20 minutes rehearsing an imaginary argument with a person you will never see again. Who is in control of your car? You are. But who is in control of your mind? The stranger. They pulled the string, and you danced to the tune of anger. You have effectively said to the world, I will only be at peace if every other driver on the road acts exactly as I wish them to. Since that is an impossibility, you have condemned yourself to a life of inevitable frustration. The feedback loop of fragility. The puppet syndrome is most visible in our digital interactions. In the age of likes, dislikes, and comments, we have outsourced our self-esteem to a collective of digital ghosts. When a mean comment appears on a screen, the puppet feels the jerk of the string. The hurt is real, deep, and immediate. This happens because we have failed to build a firewall between the external stimulus, the pixels on a screen, and our internal judgment, what we believe about ourselves. If things do not go exactly as planned, the promotion is delayed, the flight is cancelled, the date doesn't call back, the puppet feels the weight of anxiety. This anxiety is the friction caused by trying to control the uncontrollable. We operate under the grand illusion that if we just worry enough, or plan enough, or manipulate enough, we can force the world to align with our desires. This is the control paradox. The more you try to control external variables to ensure your happiness, the less control you actually have over your internal state. You become fragile because your peace is built on the shifting sands of fortune rather than the bedrock of character. The missing filter. The core of the problem isn't the event itself. Stoicism teaches us that events are indifferent. They are neither good nor bad until we apply our judgment to them. The person cutting you off is just a car changing lanes. The mean comment is just a sequence of characters. The problem is our lack of a filter. In our natural, untrained state, the stimulus hits us, and we immediately produce a response. There is no processing, no evaluation, and no defense. We are reactive. This reactivity is exhausting. It is the reason why, at the end of a day where nothing really happened, you might still feel emotionally drained. You have been pulled in 1,000 different directions by 1,000 different strings, You are suffering from decision fatigue of the soul, having reacted to every minor slight and setback as if it were a direct assault on your existence. The delusion of external happiness. We are raised in a culture that reinforces the puppet syndrome. Marketing tells us we will be happy if we buy this car. Career coaching tells us we will be successful if we reach this title. Relationships are framed as the key to completing us. All of these narratives share a common flaw. They place the good outside of the self. When you place your good in things that can be taken away from you, wealth, reputation, health, or the affection of others, you are inherently vulnerable. You're a puppet waiting for the strings to be cut. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who began his life as a literal slave, understood this better than anyone. He realized that even if his body was in chains, his mind could be free. Conversely, a king could be a slave if he were constantly worried about his reputation or his enemies. True slavery is the puppet syndrome. It is the inability to remain unshaken by things that do not depend on your will. The cost of reactivity. What is the ultimate price of living as a puppet? 1. Loss of agency. You no longer live your life. Life happens to you. Your goals and values are sidelined by your constant need to react to external fires. 2. Emotional exhaustion. Constant reactivity keeps the nervous system in a state of high alert. This leads to burnout, irritability, and a lack of presence with the people who actually matter. 3. Moral fragility. If your happiness depends on things going well, what happens when they don't? People who are puppets to their emotions are more likely to compromise their values, act out of spite, or descend into despair when faced with adversity. The realization. The first step toward becoming emotionally bulletproof is the uncomfortable realization that you have been the one handing out the strings. You have been an accomplice in your own emotional upheaval. We tell ourselves, "He made me angry," or "That news made me sad." But the Stoic correction is, "I allowed my judgment of his actions to produce anger within me." Until you acknowledge that your internal state is your own responsibility, you will remain a puppet. You will continue to be a victim of the weather, the news cycle, and the opinions of people who don't even know your name. The problem is not that the world is chaotic. The problem is that you expect it to be otherwise and have no filter to protect your inner citadel when the chaos arrives. To move from puppet to sovereign requires a total shift in perspective. It requires the death of the delusion that external things can provide lasting peace. It requires you to look at the strings, recognize who or what is pulling them, and start the difficult process of cutting them one by one. To transition from an emotional puppet to an architect of your own soul, you need more than just positive thinking. You need a rigorous, battle-tested psychological toolkit. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, the slave-turned-teacher Epictetus, and the statesman Seneca didn't write their philosophy for ivory tower debates. They wrote it for survival. They understood that a mind of iron is forged in the fires of discipline and logic. Here is the blueprint for building your emotional armor, expanded through the 3 core pillars of Stoic practice. 1. The dichotomy of control, the great filter. The foundation of Stoic resilience is the dichotomy of control. This is the art of ruthless categorization. Most people suffer because they expend 90% of their energy on things where they have % influence. The Stoic reverses this. The internal realm, your absolute sovereignty. This bucket contains only 3 things: your voluntary thoughts, your intentions, the why behind what you do, and your own deliberate actions. This is your inner citadel. Within these walls, you are king. No one can force you to think a certain way, and no one can stop you from trying to do the right thing. The external realm, the vast indifference, this bucket is infinitely larger. It includes your reputation, your wealth, the health of your body, the weather, the economy, and, most importantly, the actions and opinions of other people. The strategy and practice. When a challenge hits you, you must perform an immediate triage. Scenario: you apply for a dream job and get rejected. The puppet reaction: I'm not good enough. The hiring manager is an idiot. My future is ruined. Total focus on externals. The Stoic filter: I controlled the quality of my resume and my performance in the interview. I did not control the hiring manager's preference or the other candidates. Since the decision is external, it is nothing to me. By saying it is nothing to me, you aren't saying the event doesn't matter. You're saying it doesn't have the power to break your character. You stop leaking energy into the void. 2. The gap between stimulus and response, the seat of freedom. Victorian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl, who, while not an ancient Stoic, lived their principles, famously noted, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Most of us live life in a state of reflex. Stimulus, someone insults us. Response, anger. Stimulus, we lose money. Response, panic. We skip the space entirely, effectively behaving like a biological machine. Living in the gap. The Stoic goal is to widen that space until it becomes a vast hall of deliberation. When a first impression hits you, that initial surge of heat when you're offended, the Stoic doesn't immediately accept it as truth. They hold it up for inspection. The strategy. Epictetus advised talking to your impressions. "Wait for me a little" expression. Let me see who you are and what you represent. Let me put you to the test. Instead of saying, "I am angry," you say, "I am experiencing a feeling of anger." This linguistic shift creates distance. It allows you to observe the emotion as a passing weather pattern, rather than your identity. You realize that you aren't mad. You're choosing to be mad because you have judged the event as bad. Once you realize the judgment is yours, you can withdraw it. You reclaim the remote control of your nervous system. 3. Premeditatio malorum, the shield of foresight. The third tool is perhaps the most misunderstood, premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. To the modern mind, this sounds like pessimism. To the Stoic, it is the ultimate form of optimism, the optimism of being prepared. Why we break. We aren't usually shattered by the event itself. We are shattered by the surprise of it. We live in a Pollyanna haze, assuming our car will always start, our partners will always be there, and our health will never fail. When reality inevitably breaks that illusion, we crumble. The practice of negative visualization. Once a day, or before a major event, spend a few minutes vividly imagining things going wrong. Before a trip, imagine the flight being cancelled. Before a presentation, imagine the technology failing. In the morning, imagine encountering the meddling, the ungrateful, the arrogant, the dishonest, the envious, and the unsociable, as Marcus Aurelius did. The psychological alchemy. This does two things. First, it removes the sting of surprise. If you have already lived through the failure in your mind, the real failure lacks the power to shock you. You already have a plan. Second, it triggers inverted gratitude. When you imagine losing the things you love, you stop taking them for granted. When you open your eyes from the meditation and realize your house hasn't burned down and your family is safe, you experience a profound sense of joy for the present moment. Integrating the toolkit. The iron mind. These three tools work in a recursive loop to build your armor. 1. Premeditatio. Malorum prepares you for the hit. 2. The gap allows you to catch the hit without reacting. 3. The dichotomy of control allows you to discard the hit if it's not your responsibility. When you master these, you become bulletproof, not because you are invincible, but because you have moved your center of gravity inward. You no longer need the world to behave itself for you to be okay. You are like a deep ocean. While the surface may be whipped into a frenzy by a storm, the depths remain calm, silent, and immovable. You aren't a heartless statue. You are a resilient human being who has finally stopped asking the world for permission to be at peace. You have realized that the iron mind isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, one filtered thought at a time. There is a singular moment in the journey of every aspiring Stoic, a click in the gears of the mind, where the philosophy stops being a collection of interesting quotes and becomes a lived reality. This is the climax of your transformation. It is the moment you move from being a victim of the world to being the sovereign of your soul. This transformation hinges on a truth so radical, it feels like a superpower. No one can hurt you without your consent. To the modern ear, this sounds impossible, perhaps even offensive. We are taught that we are the products of our environment, that our trauma is dictated by others, and that our emotions are the natural, uncontrollable result of external stimuli. But the Stoics, many of whom faced exile, imprisonment, and execution, discovered a deeper truth. They found the off switch for emotional suffering. The anatomy of an insult, vibrations in the air. To understand this sovereignty, let's look at the anatomy of a social wound. Imagine someone calls you a failure or hurls a cruel insult at you in a moment of heat. To the puppet, this is a direct strike. The words land like physical blows, causing the heart to race and the stomach to churn. But the Stoic, living in the gap we explored earlier, sees the physics of the situation. As Epictetus famously observed, it is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. When someone speaks a word to you, they are simply pushing air through their vocal cords, creating sound waves that travel through the atmosphere and hit your eardrum. That is the objective reality. Those vibrations are morally neutral. They have no inherent power to cause pain in your mind. For those vibrations to become an insult, you have to 1. Catch the vibrations. 2. Translate them into a concept. 3. Judge that concept as bad or true. 4. Decide that the opinion of this person matters more than your own self-assessment. The pain is not in the air. The pain is in the consent you give to the judgment. If someone calls you a blue-headed monster, you likely laugh or feel confused, but you don't feel hurt. Why? Because you don't consent to the truth of the statement. The moment you realize you can apply that same refusal to any external judgment, you become bulletproof. You realize that you have been the one pulling the trigger on your own emotional wounds. The fortress of character. This reclamation of sovereignty is built on the realization that your character, your prohairesis, or moral will, is the only thing that truly belongs to you. Everything else is on loan from fortune. Your money can be stolen. Your reputation can be tarnished by a lie. Your body can be broken by disease. If you anchor your worth to these things, you are building your house on a fault line. But your ability to choose your own values, to act with integrity, and to maintain your reason, that is an impenetrable fortress. When you finally embrace this, the actions of others lose their edge. If a colleague steals credit for your work, a puppet feels diminished. But the sovereign Stoic thinks, they have committed an act of injustice. That is a stain on their character, not mine. My character remains intact because I did the work with excellence. Their theft is an external event. My integrity is an internal reality. You aren't ignoring the world. You aren't becoming a hermit or a robot. You're simply refusing to let the world dictate your worth. You are participating in the game of life, but you have stopped letting the score of the game determine the quality of your soul. The death of the external peace myth. The climax of this journey is the death of the if-then lifestyle. If I get this promotion, then I will be at peace. If my partner treats me better, then I will be happy. These are the cries of the puppet. The sovereign mind understands that peace is not a destination you reach. It is a posture you assume. You stop looking for peace out there, in the alignment of the stars or the kindness of strangers. You start building it in here, through the daily exercise of your reason. This is the ultimate moment of freedom. It is the realization that the prison you thought you were in, the prison of your anxiety, your need for approval, and your fear of the future, was never locked. You were holding the key the entire time. The key is your judgment. The shift from reactive to proactive. When you reclaim your sovereignty, your energy shifts. You no longer walk into a room wondering, do they like me? Instead, you walk into a room wondering, do I act with justice and kindness here? You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, how can I use this to strengthen my character? This is the climax. The moment you realize that the world can take your possessions, your status, and even your life, but it cannot touch your mind unless you let it. You are no longer a leaf blown by the wind, you are the mountain. The wind may howl, the rain may lash, and the clouds may obscure the sun, but the mountain remains. You have moved from a state of pathetic, being acted upon, to a state of apathetic, in the original Stoic sense, apatheia, not a lack of feeling, but a freedom from the disturbing passions that cloud the mind. You're finally truly your own master, the sovereign's mantra. In this moment of realization, you adopt a new way of speaking to yourself. When the world tries to pull your strings, you respond with the quiet confidence of the unshakable. You may act as you wish. That is your domain. I will react as I choose. That is mine. You can affect my circumstances, but you cannot dictate my character. I am the sole governor of my internal state. This is not a shield of stone that cracks under pressure. It is a shield of light that nothing can touch. You have reclaimed your sovereignty. You are bulletproof. Becoming emotionally bulletproof is not a destination you reach and then abandon. It is a continuous, daily practice of mental hygiene. Just as you wouldn't expect to stay physically clean without bathing, you cannot expect to remain mentally resilient without the consistent application of these ancient tools. The world will never stop being chaotic, and people will never stop being unpredictable. The shield is not a wall that keeps the world out. It is a filter that processes the world through the lens of reason. To maintain your sovereignty, you must commit to 3 non-negotiable habits. Filter through the dichotomy. At the first sign of distress, ruthlessly separate the internals from the externals. If it is outside your control, it is not worth your peace. Guard the gap. Never allow a stimulus to trigger an automatic response. Take a breath. Find the space between the event and your reaction, and choose your character over your impulse. Detach from outcomes. Do your best. Act with integrity, and then surrender the result to fate. When you stop needing the world to go your way, you become invincible. You don't need a kinder world, a better economy, or more approval to be happy. These are merely preferred indifference. True joy is found in the mastery of your own mind. You're no longer the puppet, you are the architect. The journey to an unshakable mind starts with a single conscious choice. Today I challenge you to pick one trigger, a long line, a rude driver, or a frustrating email, and treat it as a training exercise. Instead of reacting, observe the impulse, label it as an external, and choose to remain neutral. This is where your power lives. Drop a comment below. What is one string you're cutting today? Let's hold each other accountable and build this iron mindset together. If you're ready to reclaim your sovereignty, hit that subscribe button and join us.